Over the course of about 20 days, I played 3 games that are vastly different to each other, but in many ways, they speak to me on very similar levels in each game. The first game I finished of the 3 was Resident Evil 3 Remake. This is a game that was very polarizing on a whole. It was very polarizing on the internet. I think a lot of people had very different opinions about it. Some people loved it, some people hated it, some people thought it was just okay. I have my own personal views on this. If you don't know, I'm a very big Resident Evil fan. I love Resident Evil in general. I love the original Resident Evil 3. My favorite horror game of all time is Resident Evil Remake. So going into this game, I did have some expectations coming in off of Resident Evil 2 Remake. But the thing is, you can't have these vast expectations based on one of my favorite games of all time and based on one of the coolest games of all time and expect it to live up to those expectations. The reason why I probably was more fond of this game than other people, I do have gripes about it, but the reason I was more fond of this game compared to other people was probably because I knew what this game was. The original Resident Evil 2 is a very interesting game, one of the most special games with some of the best level design, some of the best horror that you could ever find. But Resident Evil 3 after that was intended to be a spin-off game that was much shorter. It didn't even have the Resident Evil 3 name on it at one point, it was just going to be called Resident Evil Nemesis. Now the thing is about Resident Evil Nemesis is that it's very short, it's very fast, it's very action-packed, it's blood-pumping, it's go, 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 go. There's not really a time to explore the scenery all the time, sometimes there is. But mostly it's just about terrorizing Jill. Jill is on this terrorizing journey. It is her career. I think it is her defining journey. I know Resident Evil 1 is kind of like Jill Valentine Central. It's where we all meet her. But I think Resident Evil 3 is where we finally get to know who Jill is and the real cut of her character. And I think that they got that across in the remake. I think that they got Jill across very well. I think Jill is at her best here. I would not mind seeing more games with this current Jill, and the performance done by the voice actor and the mocap actor as well, and even the visual designers that did design the characters, did such a good job of capturing the Jill Valentine that I know and love and obsess over for my whole entire life. It was a fun game. I thought that the action was great. I thought that the levels were cool. I thought the game was just absolutely fucking gorgeous. Like, everything about it was, like, gorgeous. I think at the end of the day, at the end of this year, when someone asked me what's the prettiest game this year, I think I would have to point to Resident Evil 3. There's just no doubt about it. The thing is, though, about Resident Evil 3 is that while the horror was fun, and while there were some scary parts, in fact, there were some parts of this game that were so scary. In fact, there was not many. There was some parts of this game that were so scary that I was, like, just pushing myself through, just trying my best to get through this. There are some downfalls, and I want to get the downfalls out of the way before I talk about more of this. First of all, Nemesis is an afterthought in this game to me. I find that Nemesis was completely underutilized in this game, and I know it sounds upsetting from a Resident Evil fan to say this, but I wanted to see more of Nemesis. Because the game was so cinematic, it felt like Nemesis wasn't a threat. It just felt like at all times I did not care about Nemesis. He was just more of a plot device in a lot of ways. Now, that's not necessarily totally a terrible thing, but if you played the original Resident Evil 3, you know that, like, Nemesis is like this scary being, this scary thing that's always on your tail. You never know when he's going to show up, or at least it feels like you never know when he's going to show up. But I never dock points off of remakes for changing things from the original. I don't get that. There's no point in, like, just doing shot-for-shot remakes of games all the time. In some cases it makes sense. Like Link's Awakening, you had to kind of do shot-for-shot in a lot of ways with that game because the story is so good. And a lot of people hadn't even played that game, and honestly, the original Link's Awakening holds up, but it's very difficult to convince someone to play that game on like an emulator on the original Game Boy. Also with Resident Evil 3 Remake, I found that like the speed of the game, I finished the game in about 4 hours and 12 minutes on my first playthrough. I found that the speed of the game helps and hinders the game at the same time. I found that like it really adds to the action of the game. It really adds to the blood pumping of the game, the heart wrenching stuff of the game. It really raises your your like heartbeat. Like it makes you scared. It makes you terrified playing this game. But it also meant that a lot of the parts of the game that you're playing through felt as though, even though they were immaculately designed, felt sometimes that it was like a little rushed. It just felt a little rushed. It felt a little bit fast, too fast sometimes. And because of that, we didn't really get to like savor a lot of moments. Now, back onto the good stuff. Again, this is one of the prettiest games I've ever played. One of the best Jill Valentine interpretations I've ever seen as well. Mocap is amazing. Best visuals I've seen in a video game all year. It's just so gorgeous. But also, above all else, I think the addition of Carlos was actually like a good thing. Now, people know that I'm not a big fan of Carlos. He's not my favorite character in the world. Even in this one, I like him even less as a character, as a person. But the addition of him into this game, his levels, his weapons, the way he acts, like, it's so much fun. It adds to this game so much, and it's one of the reasons why this game becomes even more fun as you're playing it. It's fun to play around like Carlos, especially with his new special moves, and his new design as well. I didn't use the new design because I just thought it was funny to use the old hair, but I thought that Carlos was a really great addition to this game too. Overall, I thought Resident Evil 3 is a really, really good game. Again, one of the prettiest games, great music, great atmosphere. I played this game with only one ear with hearing in it, so it wasn't as perfect of an experience as it could be. But overall, I really like this game, and I'm going to give this game an 8.5 out of 10.
Commitment, honesty, integrity, these are the core values that create the foundation for Umbrella Gaming.
The next game I got to finish was Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, a lot of people were playing this game, so I'm not going to be spoiling anything about this game. But I can say, as a person who never played the original Final Fantasy VII, and is currently playing through the new Final Fantasy VII, the original Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII Remake was one of my favorite games of all time. And some people might say, well, Calvin, you like a lot of games, but like, to jump into my top 10 is difficult. The last game that was able to do that was Persona 5 back in 2017. No game has been able to do it since, because, you know, your top 10 to me it means a lot. It's like the most important games to me of all time. I suppose you could say Skyward Sword jumped in there too, like, but that's like not a new game, that's like an older game, so I don't really count that when I'm talking about like the last game that came out in like a new release. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a really pretty game. I thought that the action in this game was so much fun. To swing a sword, every single swing of the sword, or every single punch, or shoot with a cannon, or every use of magic felt special because it felt like you were doing every single little detail that belonged to each move. I thought that adding the materia system, which I'm learning is just a really cool system even in the original game, so much fun to play around with. Like, it was exciting to pick up new materia, try them out for a while, see how far you can go with them. Different characters have different materia, so they have different spells. Switching between each character characters were so much fun because of the materia system. Because you knew one enemy was weak to lightning, so you switch to like Barret and he shoots like lightning on them, bringing them down by quite a bit. They have a stagger system in this game that I really liked, because it made some bosses that felt hopeless sometimes very hopeful, because you realize, oh, if I just stagger him like fully, I can destroy this guy. The vibes of this game are on point. The music is fucking amazing. I felt like every single inch of the game that I was going through was a part that I didn't want to miss. I stayed sometimes just like standing there watching people like act for a while. Yes, they reused a bunch of designs. Like, I'll just say that right now. I'm going to get that out of the way. They reused a bunch of designs for each individual person. Like, you're not, every time you walk a bit, you're going to see a repeated NPC. Now, that doesn't bother me. Like, I know that bothers some people, but for me, that doesn't bother me at all, especially coming from a JRPG background. That happens. It happens a lot. It's a great way to save on manpower and budget and money. It's a fantastic way to do it. Also, there was some texture pop-in. But again, that doesn't bother me. And if that bothers you, that's fine. But for me, that is not on my priority list. Did I notice it? Yes. Did it take me out for a second? Yeah, it did. But I was back there in just a little bit. This game is very emotional, which is one of my favorite things that can happen with a video game. I found myself crying my eyes out multiple times. I really did not want this game to end. I found that, like, Final Fantasy going in forward with this like system, I feel like this system, the action RPG system, has been perfected over time, and I think by the time the next game comes out, it's going to be even better. I don't think there was a moment in this game where I felt like, this sucks. And usually you have that with every game, even your favorite games. There's moments in those games where you're like, this is not very good. For example, Final Fantasy X, my second favorite game of all time. There's the cloister trials in those games that I absolutely despise. But still, you can still find other things to love about those games and other things that you like about these games. But in this game itself, there was not a moment where I felt like, oh, I don't want to do this. There were some times when a mission came up and it said, I was like, oh, that's going to suck, isn't it? That's going to be a boring mission. And then all of a sudden, I'm having the best time of my life doing this little mission. I connected to this game on an emotional level. I found that, like, the characters were all there. I found that, like, the dialogue in this game was some of the most natural between characters, which made each character even more special. I found that they fleshed out each individual character very well, to the point that I became emotionally attached to them as well. Jesse, my favorite character in all Final Fantasy VII, fantastic. Cloud was really great, the way they developed his character as time went on, because the game, of course, like, the series isn't over yet, of the remake series, but we're gonna have to see where they take the rest of their characters. The relationship between Barrett and Cloud, between Tifa and Cloud, between Barrett and Tifa, between Aerith and Barrett, all of it was just something I just wanted to eat up constantly. Always. The boss battles in this game were exhilarating. I loved, like, fighting those bosses. I would say that, if I had to be honest, I would say that one of the bosses, I think, I'm not going to say which one, I found just, like, not interesting. It wasn't hard or difficult, because, again, I didn't, like, I know it's going to sound like I'm bragging, I didn't die to a boss. I didn't die in this game, which is fine. Like, I'm not trying to be like, I didn't die in this game. I'm just saying what happened. And I found that, like, the enemies to be pretty okay. But they were challenging. There were times where I was down to my last bit of health. There was never a time where I felt like, oh, this is too easy. This is too easy, or this is, like, easy enough, because I never really think like that. But I found the bosses to be some of the most fun. A perfect way to describe it was, a person on Twitter was talking to me about it, and he was saying that, well, I've saved before bosses just so I could refight those bosses. Yeah. Fucking hell, yeah. They made a lot of additions to this game that I found since I've been playing the original. I'm up to the point of the end of the remake in the original game, and the remake for me was 40 hours long. I'm 4 hours into the original, so they added a lot. There's a lot of meaty chunk onto this game. You could tell that this was what Kitase and Nomura wanted from Final Fantasy VII originally, but of course there was limitations at the time, but still it was one of the most groundbreaking games of all time. And I'm gonna give this game a solid 10 out of 10. I fucking love this game.
Have fun.
And lastly, I got to finish Persona 5 Royal. If you don't know my history with Persona, it's my favorite game franchise on a whole. To me, I have such a good time playing all these games. Again, I've left a part of myself, and I know that sounds sappy, in each of these games. But regardless of that, I think I really just feel so good playing these games. And I'll be honest with you guys, these games have gotten me through some of my harder times in my life. Like, everyone has those games that get you through those times that are sad or bad or hard. And this was definitely one of them. This was definitely one of those games that really did that. Persona 5 is kind of just like this, if you don't know what Persona 5 is kind of like a social simulator game that's mixed with a dungeon crawling JRPG. But the way they do everything, because they put so much care into each social link and every confidant, every friend, their stories. And also those stories, even though they're fantastic, one of the main things you can get out of those, of hanging out with those friends, is that they will help you in battle in some way, or help you negotiate with monsters, because in this game you negotiate with different demons, and they will actually, or different persona, and they will become a part of you. They'll become a mask on yourself. The themes in this game stayed true. I thought that the new additions to the game didn't, like, kill the themes. Of course, the rebellious heart, standing up to the rotten adults in this world. And you know what you're gonna say, that sounds cheesy, Calvin, but at the end of the day, it's something that the director, Hoshino, definitely believes in, and Shoji Meguro as well believe in it too. And I don't disagree with a lot of the stuff they're saying in this game. A lot of the things that they deal with in this game, no other game is dealing with. No other game is dealing with the themes in this game, and it's one of the reasons why I love this game so much. The small changes, like, go a long way. They build up throughout the story now, and they weave in and out within the stories, and they kind of, like, build up to the post-game, the new semester in this game as well, which is not a post-game anymore, it's just like the end of the game. And the end of the game adds like 20 hours of gameplay, but the stuff that weaves in, the smaller stuff in between each parts of the story, really add a lot. They really add a lot, and you need to play through the whole game to really understand the post-game. They couldn't just release the post-game as a DLC, because you would have no concept of what's happening whatsoever. You would no attachment to these characters whatsoever. There's slight reworks in traversal, combat, dungeon crawling. There's like reworks in building up stats. It feels more freeing. Like, in every way, it just feels more freeing. Everything went by so smooth. Even though the original game was smooth, I felt like this game was even smoother. Because of the additions to traversal and stuff, even little things like letting you hang out with people at nighttime, which you couldn't do before, really, really adds to the game once again. I think that like a lot of times people look from the outside of Persona and see these smaller changes and go, well, it's not that big of a deal. But I think Persona fans know that it is a massive deal. The characters that they added to this game, there's quite a few, but the characters that they added to this game I thought would kind of feel kind of ham-fisted. Not at all. I cannot imagine Persona without these new characters anymore. They are not, like, the Persona canon to me, the Persona 5 canon to me, just does not make sense anymore without these characters in it. They not only added so much to the game, but added so much to my experience with the game, to my emotions connected with the game. They added so much. I try not to use the word fabulous as much as I can, but she is a fabulous addition to the game, especially with her backstory. Again, it fits in, again, I'm not going to spoil it, but it fits in with the rest of the characters' backstory at the same time as well, making them fast friends. And that's one of the coolest things about the party in Persona 5. You can be friends with them as long as you, not as long, they'll be friends with anyone that's nice, but you will have a strong connection with these people if you are another one of them that feels displaced or misplaced by society. And that is definitely all of these characters in a nutshell. The last few hours of this game, I was crying my eyes out. My head was everywhere. I was putting it into my pillow. I remember at one point I like had it on my arm, and my like arm, my t-shirt, like my shirt arm was being soaked. Same with my duvet was being soaked as well. I was crying. I'm not afraid to admit it. I was bawling my eyes out. It wasn't even normal. I was trying my best to like, because I live with people, I was trying my best not to like hag out loud and be like, oh, no, I was just like silently crying. I know that sounds so sad, but I don't care. I have this connection to this video game, like Persona 4, like Persona 3, like most other, like a lot of games that I truly love. I like to leave a part of myself in these games, and it's definitely with that. I think that this is the peak for me of emotionally impactful stories in Persona. I don't think that they've done something with their characters at this level. I played all the Persona games. I played each one of them before someone goes, have you played Persona 2? Yes, I have. Persona 2 is actually my favorite story amongst all the Persona games. But I don't think that they have made this they have implemented this much emotional impact with their characters, weave through the story, as they have in Persona 5 Royal, and I'm very grateful for them for doing that. I feel like ever since I finished the game, I was at a time loss. For the day after I finished it, I felt like I was doing nothing. I felt like I had lost everything. I was just sitting there, just kind of like, okay, what now? What do I do now? And with that being said, I'm going to give this game a 10 out of 10 as well. You're probably like, wait, 2 games 10 out of 10? Yeah. Yeah.